Hello. Let's talk about filters. This time of year, get quite a few questions about filters, so I thought, why not just show some, talk about them, see what we got. So first off, what is it? What's the reason that we have a filter in our home heating systems? It's to it used to be just is to protect the equipment. So you have a filter that's at your furnace. It's like a filter in your car. It's there to protect the engine, or in the case of the house, it's there to protect the appliance. It's there to protect the furnace from dust, because dust is kind of the number one dust and debris is kind of the number one cause of your furnace and air conditioners and that failures, and especially reduction in efficiencies. Over the years, we've also started using those filters for indoor air quality to try and purify it and clean and scrub some of the air that we're breathing in the house. Although that was never the original intent. The original intent was just to stop dust from getting into your appliance. So I figured I'd go through a few filters here. So this is a standard, what we call a 1-inch filter. So if you're going to change your filter in your house yourself, chances are you've got something like this in there, and you're going to see on the end of your filter there should be arrows. They might not look exactly like this. They might not look exactly like that, but there'll be some kind of filter or some kind of arrow on your filter to show you that you've got a direction of flow, which means the air moves this way. So on most homes, the arrow points like towards your furnace or towards your air handler, because the air is getting sucked into it and then blown out. So that's important. There's some that you look at them and you're like, well, what difference does it really make? On some of them, they put like a light coating of oil on one side that helps kind of catch the dust. On others, like this one, you'll see it has a metal mesh on one side and no mesh on the other side. So you want the air blowing into the filter, and the mesh helps hold the filter from tearing apart and smashing or whatever those things are. Now, this is called a pleated filter, and it's pleated because it goes in and out and in and out. That's to give it more surface area. If you can imagine that this was just a piece of cardboard or something that's just flat, there's not a lot of air that can get through that. But by making it go in and out, if I was to stretch this out like an accordion, it's got way more surface area. So the actual area of this filter is like this tall, probably about that tall. So it lets more air come through, which means you have to change this filter less often. But if you go to a big box store or something to buy your filters, you look at 50 different kinds of filters that all look like this. They all look kind of the same. They're all pleated. They say MERV this and MERV that. And what I wanted just to talk about is that it's very confusing, and more money doesn't necessarily mean better filter or better for you. In fact, I've been doing this long enough to see filters actually destroy equipment, because people went and they bought what they thought was the best filter they could get, but it ended up destroying their equipment because it's too restrictive. The very best filter, as far as like blocking dirt from your furnace, would be a sheet of cardboard, something that air just can't get through, because so you can have a really high MERV rating, which is basically the amount of particulates it'll take out of the air. You could have a really high MERV rating, and that sounds great, but it might also destroy your equipment. And the way that we test this is we actually check pressures on each side of the filter, and on the other side of the furnace, we check the pressures to see how much resistance these things actually give out. So that's what I'm going to go through a few. So this filter here would be essentially like my least favorite kind of filter. It will do the trick. You do need to change it more frequently because it has less surface area. It's only 1 inch thick, but it does the job for protecting the furnace. So I'll pop on to another one here. So this guy, one of my favorites. So this is essentially the same exact kind of filter, only it's bigger. It's 5 inches thick, but if I turn it like this, I'll show you, it's still pleated, right? It's still got the pleats. It's still got the mesh on it. You can see that mesh there. The other side, it doesn't. If I show you on the end, it's got a directional flow that shows you which way it goes. But the reason I like this one so much better is it's 5 inches wide. So these pleats, if you can imagine, if I was to stretch this one out, This thing is way more surface area. So this lasts way longer and is less restrictive to the appliance. But it's only less restrictive until it gets plugged. So as this thing fills with dirt, the filter, it actually filters out more stuff and eventually plugs and you need to change your filter. So these, if you're down at your furnace and you have a big wide filter like this, good job. You got a really good one. I wouldn't necessarily say it's the best out there, but this is a huge improvement over the other one. All right, what else do I have? So very similar to that other one is this guy. This is an expandable filter. Once again, it's pleated. And it stretches out and goes in your cabinet like this. But it's the same. You can see it's the exact same idea. It's pleated fabric, metal on one side, not on the other, and has a directional flow. These ones show it on top. So if you had to pull it out to see, you'll see it on top where it shows you which way the air flows. And remember, generally, like 99% of the time, the arrow should be pointing at the furnace. So you pull that out, that stretches out, that's as far as it goes. But you can imagine, once again, if I was to stretch this out till it was flat, the surface area is huge. So it has a really, really long life. These usually last anywhere from 6 months to a year without needing to change them. And the pressure drop, which is like the amount of restriction to the furnace, is really low until it gets plugged. The further along you go, the more plugged it gets, the pressures start getting too severe. And what happens, I guess, just to say, if you do have a plugged filter, what does that really matter? Your furnace will overheat. Or in the summertime, your air conditioning can't get the air past it, so it'll freeze. And every time those things happen, you're reducing the lifespan of that piece of equipment. One more. This one's a totally different one. So this is this is completely different. You can see it's 1 inch. It's 1 inch thick. But it's metal. So I'm going to do a couple things. This one, you might see at a box or something, material like this. It's kind of, see if I can get it to focus here. It's like fiberglass. It's like fiberglass hair almost. This type of filter material is excellent because it lets air go through it. And you just have to change it when it's good. So it has very low pressure drop across it. It's and this is the kind that they usually have oiled on one side. So if you're at like a big box store, usually a filter that looks like this is going to be probably one of the most inexpensive filters they have, and it's probably one of the better ones. This particular one is actually an electronic filter. So I'm just kind of giving you an idea what some of the differences are. This filter actually has a better pressure drop than the bigger filters that I showed you. And it also, back up there, you can do it. There we go. And then the other thing that something like this does is it's not electrostatic. It actually puts a voltage in here, not enough to harm you or anything, but a voltage runs through this that actually helps pull and collect particles from the air that are microscopic and makes them collect on the strands of this. So this is actually what I have in my house. But so this thing has an extremely low pressure drop, even though it's only 1 inch thick, but collects as much stuff, or actually more stuff, than say one of these in your house. So I would say this is kind of top of the line. I haven't seen anything better yet, though I learn something new every day. And I guess the thing is, for any of your appliances out there, like, it's all interchangeable. So you can always, if you did go down and you're changing your filter out, and you're like, I do want a wider one. Like maybe your furnace is really loud. Putting in a larger filter can lots of times reduce the amount of noise. If you have a real dusty home, we do actually have technologies now to help take some of that dust out of the home and clean your air in the area, like with your furnace, whereas that wasn't a thing you could do before. But in any case, I hope you learned something about filters. Your standard filter, your standard 1 inch filter, like one like this, on average, you want to change that about every 3 months, or when it's dirty. So what I always say is, if you haven't been changing your filter and you're not sure, check it after every month until you see that, okay, it's actually okay for a few. Holding it up to the light, seeing how much light you can see through it is a nice way to just to gauge the dirt on it. And having a new one there is another nice thing because you can pull it out and be like, oh, hey, it used to be white, and now it's really brown. It's time to change that thing. All right, that's it. If you have any questions or if you want some help with it or something at any time, feel free to give us a call at the number below. But otherwise, maybe you don't need to call. Now you know. Thank you.